This man had $47 in his pocket, and his boss loved to humiliate him in front of everyone. But 6 months later, that same boss was begging him not to be fired. Marcus was 38 years old and worked as a janitor at Tech Corp, a software company in downtown Chicago. Every single day he woke up at 4:30 in the morning. He took 2 crowded buses to get to work. The commute alone was an hour and a half. He arrived at the office before 6 a.m. when everything was still empty and dark. Marcus cleaned 15 floors. Alone. He earned $1,400 a month, barely enough to pay rent for the small apartment he shared with his 10-year-old daughter, Sophia. Every day, he brought lunch from home in a worn plastic container to save money. And when nobody was looking during his breaks, he did something different. Marcus studied programming through YouTube videos on his phone, an old cracked phone he'd bought used for $60. He dreamed of working in tech one day, but he kept this dream to himself. Nobody could know. He watched tutorials during his lunch break, sitting in the stairwell where nobody could see him. Late at night, after his daughter went to sleep, he practiced coding until 1 a.m. Of the employees at Tech Corp, Marcus was invisible, just the janitor. They walked past him every day without a word. Not even a good morning. He was part of the furniture. But there was one person who always noticed him. Richard Morrison, the company's chief operating officer. A 54-year-old executive who loved making others feel small to feel big himself. Richard had a habit of pointing out Marcus to clients and visitors, making jokes at his expense. It was his way of showing dominance, of reminding everyone who had power. Marcus had learned to keep his head down, to ignore the comments, to accept being invisible. He told himself it didn't matter, that one day things would be different. But deep down, each dismissal, each joke, each moment of being treated as less than human carved a deeper wound. It was a Thursday morning, March 14th. Marcus was cleaning the glass conference room on the executive floor when Richard walked in with 3 important potential clients from a Fortune 500 company. The clients were there to potentially invest millions in Tech Corp. Richard was in his element, showing off the fancy office, talking about innovation and success. Then he spotted Marcus. Richard's face lit up with that familiar, cruel smile. He saw an opportunity to entertain his guests. "Gentlemen," he said loudly, making sure Marcus could hear every word. "Let me tell you something amusing. You see our janitor there? That's Marcus." Richard continued, his voice dripping with condescension. "Marcus here has been cleaning our toilets for 3 years. But you know what his dream is?" He paused for effect, letting the anticipation build. "He wants to work in technology. Can you imagine? A 38-year-old janitor thinking he can become a programmer." The clients laughed politely, uncomfortable but complicit. Marcus felt his face burning with shame. The spray bottle in his hand felt impossibly heavy. He could feel everyone's eyes on him through the glass. But he didn't say a word. He just kept his head down and continued wiping the window. He finished cleaning that window and quietly left the room. As he walked down the empty hallway back to his supply closet, his hands were shaking. He gripped his cleaning bucket so hard, his knuckles turned pale. But something shifted in Marcus that day. As he stood alone in that janitor's closet, surrounded by mops and cleaning supplies, something inside him changed. The humiliation didn't break him. It ignited him. He looked at his reflection in the small, dirty mirror and made a decision. Richard Morrison didn't know it yet, but that would be the last time he ever laughed at Marcus. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., he sat at his cheap kitchen table and made a plan. He had $47 saved from tips he'd earned helping elderly neighbors carry groceries. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start. Used that $47 to buy a month of better internet at home. He canceled the cable TV he barely watched. He cut everything that wasn't essential. His daughter Sophia asked why they couldn't watch cartoons anymore. "Just for a little while, baby," he told her. "Daddy's working on something important." Every single day, after finishing his 10-hour shift cleaning floors and toilets, Marcus studied programming for 5 hours straight. From 7 p.m. until midnight, no days off, no excuses. His eyes burned from staring at the screen. His back ached from sitting after standing all day. But he didn't stop. He slept 4 hours a night. He stopped watching sports. He stopped hanging out with friends. Every spare moment was dedicated to learning. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Python. He devoured online courses, YouTube tutorials, coding challenges. While other janitors took smoke breaks, Marcus studied algorithms in the stairwell. By day 60, Marcus could build basic websites. By day 90, he understood databases and back-end systems. By day 120, he was coding better than many junior developers at TechCorp. But nobody knew. He was still just the invisible janitor, mopping floors while secretly becoming an expert. And Marcus had an advantage nobody else did. When he cleaned the server room at TechCorp late at night, he paid attention. He studied the network architecture. He understood the systems, the security protocols, every vulnerability. He knew the company's technology infrastructure better than most of their own IT staff. Day 156 arrived. Marcus woke up at 4:30 a.m. like always, took the 2 buses like always, started cleaning like always. But this would not be an ordinary day. As he arrived at TechCorp's building that morning, he had no idea that everything he'd been preparing for was about to be tested. When Marcus walked into the building that morning, something was wrong. Employees were running through hallways. People were shouting, phones ringing everywhere. The entire company was in complete chaos. A massive ransomware attack had hit TechCorp overnight. All systems were locked, encrypted. The company's entire database was being held hostage. They were losing $75,000 every hour the systems stayed down. And nobody in the IT department could fix it. Marcus was mopping the hallway outside the IT department when he heard the desperation. The head of IT was on the phone screaming at external security consultants. Richard Morrison was pacing frantically, his usual arrogance replaced by pure panic. Their biggest client presentation was in 2 hours, and they had nothing. Marcus stood there for a moment, mop in hand. His heart was pounding. This was it. 5 months of 4 a.m. wake-ups. 5 months of sacrificing sleep, time with his daughter, everything. For this moment, he took a deep breath, set down his mop and bucket, and walked toward the IT department door. Marcus opened the door and walked in. 12 people were crowded around computer screens, the entire IT team, plus Richard and other executives. They all turned and stared at him with confusion and annoyance. "A janitor, now!" Marcus looked directly at the IT director and said calmly, "I can help fix this." The IT director started to dismiss him, but Richard, desperate and out of options, shouted, "Let him try! We've got nothing to lose." Marcus sat down at the main terminal. His fingers flew across the keyboard. Command lines, code. Everyone watched in stunned silence. 37 minutes later, every screen in the company suddenly lit up green. Systems coming back online. Data restored. Database decrypted. Marcus had done it. The room erupted. The IT director's jaw dropped. Richard stood frozen, unable to process what just happened. 1 week later, Marcus was hired as a junior systems analyst. Salary, $65,000 a year. 3 months after that, senior systems analyst, $85,000. 6 months from that day in March, Director of Cybersecurity, $140,000. And Richard was demoted for the security breach that happened on his watch. He now reported to Marcus. "Friends, this story teaches us something powerful. Nobody can define your worth except you. The world will judge you by your job title, by your clothes, by what they see on the surface. But your true value is in what you do when nobody's watching." Marcus didn't wait for permission. He didn't wait for someone to believe in him. He just did the work. 5 hours a night, 156 days straight, and when opportunity knocked, he was ready. So I ask you, what are you doing in the hours when nobody sees? Because success doesn't happen when you're discovered. It happens when you're already great and the world finally notices.